Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Flat Electric Association January board meeting. February board meeting. Let's not rehash January. February board meeting. Welcome to everyone. Let's go ahead and get the meeting started with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Let's see, approval of agenda. Does anybody have anything on the agenda that they would like to comment on or make changes to? Seeing none. Thank you, Rachel. Move to approve. Second by Kohler. Any other discussion on the agenda? And we'll vote. All in favor of keeping the agenda as it stands, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Good, Graham?
Oh, good. Okay. I guess I didn't. Because we have Kirsten.
We should double check.
I don't see her on.
Janelle said she sent her the Zoom. So she should.
I heard someone say Kirsten was on, so I made an assumption. But we should probably.
We have a quorum, yeah, but.
Okay.
Well, we didn't get Kirsten's vote on the agenda. All right, moving on. Member comments and concerns. Looks like we have quite a few participants. Do we have anybody who?
You want me to give the preamble?
Yeah, go ahead. Looks like we have a few people who want to make comments. So Graham, go ahead and give that preamble to that.
The board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board asks that each participant's comments pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing. Formal complaints must be filed in writing and submitted in compliance with applicable board policy. Comments from the public will be directed to the entire board and not to any individual. No personal attacks will be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on our website.
Thank you. All right.
When?
Yeah. Oh, we have public comment in the room. So priority goes. So go ahead, stand up, introduce yourself. Where do you live and or what district, and then go ahead with your comments.
Hi, I'm Emily Frozen. I live in District 3, and I'm also here on behalf of the Energy Program for San Juan Citizens Alliance that represents over 5,000 supporters that are majority in LPEA district, LPEA territories. And so first, I wanted to thank you all for the work that the board and LPEA staff are doing and putting into efforts in the lawsuit against Tri-State, and that you're putting into exiting your contract with Tri-State. You have heard from me before, but with the recent FERC calculation ruling and LPEA's lawsuit against Tri-State, now is the best time to leave Tri-State, and I want to encourage you all to seriously look towards leaving our contract with Tri-State. Now that LPEA has received their buyout number of a little under $210 million with $4.7 million in capital credits, this is less than half of what Tri-State originally claimed it would be. And LPEA should start that 2-year exit clock as soon as possible and get the ball rolling on replacement power. I also want to stress that I understand that our rate increase is just a pass-through rate increase from Tri-State. But if LPEA continues purchasing this power from Tri-State, member rates will only continue to go up. And this jeopardizes LPEA's commitment to affordability. LPEA leaving its contract with Tri-State is the best way to secure affordable clean energy. And since LPEA's contract with Tri-State requires a 2-year exit timeline, every day that LPEA waits to file their exit notice locks us into paying more Tri-State's increasing rates. Looking ahead, LPEA should start requesting public input on member suggestions for future power supply. And additionally, LPEA should be updating their power supply and three-prong strategy web pages so that we as members can understand what the next steps are and how they're influenced by both the FERC decision and LPEA's lawsuit. Finally, I was looking recently at the where the solar can be installed map, and I saw mostly red and orange, and I think the LPEA should start to update and address some interconnection issues. Looking at this map, rooftop solar is limited due to those issues, and it's a great option for local generation. So I'd be curious to hear more from LPEA also about what you're all doing to support local generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thanks for joining us this morning. Okay, move on to the next member comment. Looks like Gwen, if we could let Gwen speak. Go ahead, Gwen.
Hi, I'd also like to thank everybody for what you're doing. My name is Gwen Unger. I live in Forest Lakes, and I'm in District 4. This does pertain to LPEA. It may not sound like it right at the beginning. I was asked to do a presentation for lifelong learning on climate change and kind of where we're headed. And that presentation is going to be next Thursday, the 22nd at 7 o'clock. And I'd like to invite all of the directors to come there, not because I'm a great presenter or not because it's going to be the best presentation you ever attended, but because there's going to be a lot of information. And just to give you a real quick summary, if you'll recall back in 2015, the Paris Accords were signed by almost every country in the world. And the primary goal there was to say we could not let the global average temperature go more than 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. And the reason for that was because there's a lot of bad things that could potentially happen if we allowed that to happen. There was also a decision made that we should try to do everything we can to keep under 1.5 degrees centigrade increase. And I can tell you that the news on that's very bad. We've now blown through 1.5 as of January. So, you know, there's a lot of nasty things. And if you look at the graph, which is a good way to get a trend, the temperature is increasing faster and faster. We're not slowing it down. It's actually increasing faster. So my guess is we're going to hit 2.0 somewhere in the next 2 decades. And, you know, we'll talk about what that means. So getting to where that applies to LPEA, Dan Harms did a presentation for Lifelong Learning a couple of weeks ago, and he indicated, if I remember correctly, that Tri-State's mixture is about 1/3 coal, 1/3 gas, and 1/3 clean. And that's just not going to be acceptable. So, you know, the fact that we've got this opportunity to buy out of the contract, I would agree with Emily 100% that we really need to take advantage of that now. And since we have to give them 2 years notice, you know, the sooner the better. I would also say that even if we end up not being able to save a single penny by buying completely out of the contract, it still gives us 2 really good things. One, we can move much faster toward clean energy. And number 2, the members of LPEA get to run LPEA instead of Tri-State telling us what we can and cannot do. So again, I would encourage the board to move as quickly as you can to send the notice to Tri-State to say that we're getting out. And you know, hopefully you can make that happen sooner than later, because I think a lot of members really want that. So thanks for listening. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Gwen. Thanks for your comments. Next, Werner. Go ahead, Werner.
Yeah, I had to unmute. I'm Werner Heiber. I live in Durango, Colorado. I spoke at the last meeting about my opinion and many of our residents' opinion that it's time to leave Tri-State. This is a 15-year process, and there are many reasons, from climate change to local economy to local control, but it's time to make that step. The second aspect I want to talk about is that I heard from a local PV installer that Durango, most of Durango, 80% apparently, and other areas have been redlined for further PV installations due to infrastructure issues, capacity. And this also applies to 9R district, who had to cancel the Needham Elementary and the Riverview PV installations. Now, they made other use with the money they're saving, and it's incredible how fast they progressed with these installations at 6 other schools. But this really affects the local economy, local jobs, local businesses. And if they truly only found out a few weeks ago that this is the case, I encourage the board to look at, number one, increase information to the local economy, to the local community, what is happening, and hopefully also improve the infrastructure that's needed to accommodate additional PV systems. Again, I thank for all what you have been doing, and I look forward to hear more how you're going to address this last issue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Werner. Okay, I don't see any other comments. Nope. Okay, thanks. Then we'll move along. Moving into consent board items. So as indicated, I'll ask at this point if there are any of these items that anybody would like clarification on or make comments on. And then at any point, as I said before, if we feel like we want to pull something for a separate vote, that's certainly still an option. So Tim, go ahead.
Thanks. On the minutes, and I apologize, I didn't say something about this beforehand. There are a couple small places of clarification, I think. So for me, it's on page 3 of the board, page 4 of the board packet. There was a word missing or something. Oh, right. Under attorney update on actions. 4th paragraph, Colorado PUC -5. It seems like that should say LPEA file.
I think what.
Because I don't think the Colorado PUC file.
No, but I think these are sort of like bullet points. So this is, I think, probably.
I'm trying to look and see if there was something preamble to say something. This is what LPEA is.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah, we can sort of address that grammatically, but I would say that sort of like it probably would have been FERC dash and then whatever, Lottie County litigation dash and Colorado PC dash, and sort of like those are looks like kind of bullet headings, but you're right in that the format isn't consistent amongst all 3. So,
Okay,
so we
well,
can find that.
I think it's to clarify that. I think you're pointing out that it is LPEA file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as long as we make that clear.
Right, sure,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah,
We can do that.
we can address that.
Okay. Any other concerns about that particular thing? Because we'll include that in our consent.
No, it was just a quick correction.
Was there another one? Was there another?
Any other minutes issues?
Yeah, there was a little bit. Previous page of the division dashboard. See on Outlook report, all key performance indicators besides
yes.
the SAGE. It seems, again, that it's not clear.
Yeah, we're matching. That's probably the phrase that's missing.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll go back through that.
So yeah, we can change that. That's-
Well, besides 81 bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay,
Sorry.
No, that's perfect. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here. So.
And we don't have to pull it off.
No,
Yeah.
no. Just that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason we would need to pull it off is if someone didn't agree with the way you're making these changes, and then we pull it off and discuss it. Okay. Kohler, did you have one?
I do. Mine is on page 12 of 160. It's the patronage to bad debt form. And on the 10th one down, with the account number ending in 6602, it reflects that what is owed is $37.26. There's no patronage capital returned. Then discounted patronage applied to the bad debt was $37.26. And it shows a negative discounted amount and the zero balance. So I just need a little clarity on how those numbers, there wasn't any patronage capital, how can you apply it? And then how does it get a negative in the discounted amount? That makes it seem like we're almost within something. So a little clarity on that, please.
We'll probably have to come back to it on that.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that account. Yep.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm a little bit stuck on that one because, I mean, are you okay if we approve it?
Yes,
As long as we get clarity on that particular line
Yes.
item there. Okay.
it's not a big.
Yeah, we want to get it right though. That's, yep. Okay, any other concerns on the consent board items? Rachel?
Just a clarification, is there a reason in policy, so I'm looking at the policy 109 update, page 17, bullet point, policy 2A, line item 1. So instead of putting in the changes in the amounts awarded, we just put in a general statement. And I guess my one question is, where else does that shift in what we approve for officers show up so that it can actually be considered again? I was trying to think, like, because I think in the budget, when we approve that as like one smushed line item.
No, we actually
pull it
give
out?
you, the board's budget is line by line. Okay. You get very detailed, so it actually does show the stipend amounts.
But does it break it out?
It does.
Officer stipends
Yes.
versus, okay,
It does as of this budget when we
Yeah.
changed that.
Okay.
So,
perfect.
And that's why we kept it open in the policy. It's just so that you didn't have to keep changing the policy every year if you wanted to change the stipend.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
Anything else? Then I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent board items.
Okay, moved by Dan,
One second.
second by Rachel. Anything else there? Discussion? Vote all in favor of approving consent board items. Raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay, it's unanimous, Graham. Okay, moving on, CEO and staff reports. Just to take it away.
Okay. Put it up on the board. So we have a really nice collection of old photos, by the way. So it's really fun to go through those. And staff has been definitely researching this because it is our 85th year anniversary this summer, is that right? So they wanted to go through all these just to see, so this is really fun. We don't know who this gentleman is. And okay. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is reporting on January. We are meeting all of our goals. So as we stated in January, the January board meeting, we changed the SAIDI number to be more reflective of actually how Jerry's team manages outages and Dan. And so the national average for the goal of SAIDI is actually 120 minutes. So we're going to change that again because I can't remember who on staff astutely said, why are we going to the, what is that, 100,000th decimal point? So that is going to change to just 100 because it's actually 120 minutes is the national average. We still want to beat that. So that's why we have 100. And it is how the rest of the US measures SAIDI and how we are rated on our KRTAs and how we relate to other co-ops is through that 120 minutes, which is actually an average over the year. So it's a yearly average. And so we're trying to beat that. Now we had talked about, well, can we figure it out per month? And I even said, can you take the past 5-year average of our SAIDI for the month of January? And we can report on that. And I was told, no, we would, it's just, you can't predict the weather. You can't predict car accidents. It's just, it does not set us up for success. And so my team said, no, please don't make us do that because it's not a good measure if people don't measure it that way. How they measure it is this way. And this is how we can understand how we're doing in our own service territory, but also with other co-ops and the KRTAs that CFC reports on. And then, of course, that's a pretty big number, but then as you know, the appendix, we actually have certain graphs and we can report specifically how we look for the month. So you do see how we are doing for that month. Any questions on that one? Yeah.
So just for clarification, the 2.918 are minutes
It is,
and accumulation.
correct.
So then,
Yes.
so if we start to see a trend, we'd see that in the graph. It would show up in this.
So what Jerry and the team are going to do, because that's a good question, we even brought that up, is that if we're seeing that like maybe next month it really jumps pretty significantly, let's say we're to 50, and it was a storm, that's reasonable. But if we start getting close to 100 early in the year, we are gonna look at the trends. So the important part is, to your point, look at the month, right? But they're gonna keep an eye on it, because what this helps us do, and again, Jerry brought this, one of the dashboards, I don't know if you remember, was a hex 3D map. And so that is really our future, is we're looking at data analytics to show us, are there more outages in certain areas that keep popping up more frequently in neighborhoods? And if that's the case, then there's something wrong if it's not weather related. And that then goes into our capital budget planning process. So yes, there's a lot more into that. Once we finish those hex maps, that'll give us a lot more insight. Yep. Okay, everything else looks good. Beneficial electrification sales. So we were really perking on those pretty significantly. And then we have seen a slowdown this year. Dan, do you want to talk to that one a little bit?
Yeah, I'll also say this is a little bit of a work in progress still right now, finding the right metric that we want to pursue for the year. What has happened is that we got better data on electric vehicles and know how much each electric vehicle is using on average in our system. And it's lower than what we were originally projecting now that we have a larger set of data. And so when we made our projection, it was still based on that higher usage per electric vehicle. And so we just need to make sure our goal is in sync with how we're actually reporting the data. So I think it'll be a little tighter. This is also, we are indeed seeing a slowdown. I mean, heat pumps are still chugging along great. EVs are still growing month over month, but not as fast as they have been. So that impacts it somewhat. So we may reevaluate the goals just a little bit, but that's the story of that.
Rachel.
Kind of curious on that overall trend, and if it's kind of what your thoughts are, what's feeding into that, if we've kind of hit saturation with the early adopters and we're starting to dribble, or if there's something else.
I think that's certainly what goes on. You certainly have a quick adoption rate. I forget there's a special name for the curve of the early adopters and the mass adoption, and holdouts at the end. And so we're probably maybe tapped on that. There's been a lot of press lately on some EVs that may be impacting it a little bit as well. And so it's hard to say exactly, but we're sort of watching the trend and seeing where that goes. And I think we can move the needle with what LPEA does and our promoting of electric vehicles, but we aren't going to persuade everybody. But I think we can do it.
Question.
Yeah, and I wanted to clarify the first half of that statement, which I think was more about the EVs that are out there. And correct me if I'm getting this wrong, I'm just interpreting what I thought you said. The EVs that are already out there are not actually using quite the kilowatt hours that we predicted that they would. And so that directly impacts the.
Yeah, almost exactly right. So like, let's say at the beginning, we only had 50 EVs out there, and we could look at what the average those 50 used. Well, those 50 people were really excited about using their EVs.
Okay.
And they were going all over the place, and so our average was here.
Yeah.
And now more people, and we got quite a better average, and it brought it down a little bit. So that we're just calibrating as we go.
And so it's not initial guess or speculation based on current good data. It's previous good data compared to current good data, and it is going down.
Yeah, the larger our data set, the more accurate we
Is this 25K goal the same as last year?
I think we're
No, it's much
higher.
higher.
Okay, what was it last year?
I would have to look.
Okay,
I'll dig into that though.
thank you.
But if you remember, we were beating it dramatically kind of every month last year.
Right.
So it makes sense that it was
Yeah,
adjusted.
we were beating it, and we just didn't want to go to where we were last year. It's like, oh man, we beat that so easily. We're gonna up the ante even more. And that's where we were at. But I'll get that number.
Okay, next slide, please. So we're still working on the, how we're gonna format the slides. So there's still some space. If you're looking and you're wondering, why is it so blank on some pages? We're just trying to figure that one out. Okay, so let's see. All green checks. I'm just trying to highlight anything in here that's pretty noteworthy. Okay, so this is the part where we can talk about solar and the questions that were brought up this morning with membership, email that I sent yesterday that Dan had generated. So I'm gonna kick this over to Dan to kind of explain how this all happened, why it happens seemingly so quickly, what resulted in it due to our current net metering generous policy. This is really what created the issue. And why this is an engineering issue now that really puts La Plata Electric at risk, a severe risk, if we let this continue. Dan?
Yeah, it's, I'll say a story that starts probably a year ago when we started looking at PUC's interconnection requirements, or interconnection procedures, I should say, different than interconnection requirements. Procedures are how you evaluate applications, different screening criteria that you perform on that. This is something that is applicable to co-ops, and we have to abide by it. There's level 1, level 2, level 3 screening. Level 3, you can picture being very large, almost like what's being proposed up at Hesper's, very large type systems. Level 2 is sort of where you go if you don't pass like easy past level 1. And in between there's supplemental reviews. It's a long 50, 60-page document that go through and review on that. So we've been working on that diligently for the last several months, trying to get everything up to speed, and we started evaluating the different screening criteria. Lots of different criteria, fault currents, penetrations of solar on the circuit. And the standard, one of the limits is 15%. If the nameplate capacity installed on the circuit is within 15% of the peak load on the feeder, or it actually says bound between two automatic reclosing devices, then that's a failure of screening level 1, or level 1, and you go to supplemental screening. That supplemental screening is going to have different criteria, and one of those is, are you serving more than or up to 100% of what they call minimum daytime loading? Making sure that you do not backfeed through a circuit, or actually even through a reclosing device is the way that is. So if we just applied the standard level 1, 15% of peak, we hit that threshold in lots of different places. And the reason why that threshold was there is because that's usually when, and it's also 80% of minimum loading, that's usually when voltage issues start to creep up. Since we've been, I'll say, proactively installing and requiring advanced smart inverter settings on our system, that has helped us manage the voltage aspects of it. Okay. So I wasn't too concerned about that lower level. And so we could show more grace than that. So then that almost brought us on to that second one right away, which is where we've chosen to draw our line in the sand, which is 100% of minimum daytime load. If I was asked 6 months ago, how many circuits do you have that are approaching this, I would have said, oh, none. We aren't anywhere close to that. Then with the new data that we have from especially Camus, some new SQL databases that we're running, gathering and utilizing AMI data, SCADA information, I was very surprised to see we had some circuits pushing very close to that. And the reason why those crept up so quickly, 2023 was a very large year for solar installations. Well more, 60% higher than what we installed even the previous year. And then we've also had a lot of large systems going in. A lot of stuff I'm not going to say names in here on who's been putting in some of the larger systems, but very large systems going in within, especially the city of Durango. For every solar installation that gets installed, obviously the solar is producing in the middle of the day. That's when the loads are the lowest. And solar is producing more than 7 to 10 times of what the actual load is. And so that means it can feed the next 7 to 10 homes down the road. And that's great. And that's exactly what net metering was there to do. And we thrived on that for a long time. Now we've served all those neighboring homes and the glass is full. We've served everything and there's no place to put additional generation without going back on those transmission systems. Going back on the transmission system, that's where we have to say no more. Because that really impacts how our protective devices can sense what's going on. And this is very different than just having no load. There's actually load that is covered by an inverter-based resource, and it's very technical on why serving something from an inverter-based resource is different from a traditional spinning inertia generation. And so relays do not, it could be, the fault current can be cloaked, so to speak, by the inverter-based relays. And we may not detect the fault. A line can hit the ground and things get a little different and don't get detected. And conversely, if line does start pushing backwards onto the transmission system, that's when relays are saying, well, that doesn't seem right. And I'm detecting the fault that's here, but really it's here. And you get miscoordination and things trip open when possibly they shouldn't in the event of a fault. And these are not things that we can play and take lightly. We have to watch this very carefully. We had talked to industry experts all over the United States, and we finally determined once we started talking to one industry expert and they referred us to another industry expert that we've already talked to, I felt like we've talked to a lot of people at that time. So we've talked to several, NREL's doing some great stuff on it, talked about how HECO and public service of APS is dealing with this as well. They are also closing circuits and feeders because of the same issue. But they're probably closing them off earlier because they'll have limits in the 80% range instead of we're up here 90% because of the voltage mitigation stuff we put in place already. We sort of sincerely apologize we didn't get this information out to you sooner. We had a lot of large installations that just came in real recently. And when we're trying to make the decision on whether to approve an application or not, some of these are large, especially you mentioned 9R school district applying. We were able to accept 850 kilowatts of applications from Durango 9R. That's a lot. But we had to turn down a couple because those two districts already had other large installations and a lot of solar equipment. Now, as I mentioned in an email earlier, there are things that we can do about this. And we're looking at that. It's not going to be something that happens overnight, but we're certainly different ways to incentivize load growth in areas. So we're applying for a grant at this very moment. It's called the Greater Grant. It's always a buzzword for each one of these grants that come through. And that has a focus on microgrid resiliency, virtual peaking power plants where we can maybe utilize all this stuff, put some battery banks out there, have a place to absorb some of the solar energy. So there's an option there that we're pursuing. Other things are, and also within that grant, is ways to increase and promote loading within those daytime periods. A lot of people might jump to EVs right away, but a lot of times the EVs aren't at the house during the day. They're at the workplace in town on the circuits where we don't have problems. Where we're having problems are the more residential type circuits. So really one of the next best things that we're focusing on is grid interactive water heaters. All homes have water heaters. We can get water heaters to charge more during daylight hours. That creates more headspace for more solar installed. There's different relay controls that we looked at. They're very expensive. And the key thing to remember is this is not a matter of upgrading power lines. I can make a wire 10 times the size it is today, but if I don't have a place to put the generation that's already served the load, then that still hasn't solved my problem. So I need some way to either allow the generation to feed back onto the transmission system, which means reconfiguring our distribution system to be more of a bulk transmission system, which isn't gonna happen economically. That means looping transmission lines, and acting like a bulk transmission grid, which we are not. And the other things that can gain us a little bit of space, it's called 3BO, it's ground fault, it's ground fault voltage over protection, over voltage protection. That happen, and we get into positive, negative sequence faults, and it gets all really technical after that. Those are some of the things we're looking at too. Also having some engineering firms write us up some white papers, so we can get you some more engineering geek on this if you really want it. But all the ones we talked to all agree that these are not things to be taken lightly. We need to hit the pause button a little bit, see where we are. We have lots of applications that are still pending out there. They're going to push it a little higher, let the dust settle a little bit and see if we can wring a little more out of the system. But you know, I'm with you. I want to put as much solar out there as we can. It's just I need us to put the solar in places where it's not right now. There's still lots of opportunities throughout our county, but yes, the city of Durango has been a place that has installed a lot of solar. A lot of big installations that have gone in recently that just sucked up the capacity like that. So, afraid to ask for questions. But I think that's where we are.
Cool.
So this gets me back to the question I asked last meeting, and that is, do we need to readdress the net metering thing that we talked about a couple months ago and didn't change it, so it goes forward? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is I noticed on the map, the red area, and it looks like the red area is where I am. I don't see that much solar out there. I see some. So is there some pretty big units there that are doing that, or is it, I'm just not seeing a lot of solar there?
I'm going to sneak a little closer, Kirsten, since you couldn't hear me from back there. There is a lot of solar in Raptor J, you know, and other places around the western part of the county, particularly up in the Trappers Crossing area. There's quite a bit. And so this isn't let me be clear on how we're measuring this as well. This isn't a predictive analysis of here's theoretically how much nameplate capacity is out there, and here's our load, and therefore it's a wash. No, we're actually looking at the substation feeder. And so I've got charts and graphs that go back to 2020, and I look at the same day of the year, the year 2000, 2010, 2015, and then today. And each year, as more and more solar comes on, you're seeing, you know, we've heard about the duck curve. This is the duck curve in live action. The belly of the duck has hit the floor, is where we've hit in some of these areas. But yes, it's out there. You may not see it real prevalently, but it's all there. And it's like I said, you get 1 out of every 7 to 10 homes with solar, and that's enough to feed an entire circuit during the daytime hours. One thing that we would really love to have happen is, you know, having some more technological advancements that allow specific programming to say, I mean, I hate to tell somebody no, because 2 months out of the year where we run into this problem, it's usually in the spring and the fall, when the loads are lower and the solar production is high. And so I want to make sure that, you know, we can accommodate all what's going on out there and not overshoot.
So I thought they had inverters on them that would back them off or tail them if needed to be on the system.
Only on a voltage aspect, and that is what we're doing. We're keeping the voltage in check, but that doesn't prevent reverse power flow back into the substation itself.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Good explanation. And for the work, you know, to try and identify these issues. I guess I have a couple questions around one. You mentioned procedures and requirements and so forth for PUC, right? So, and then it seems like there's a safety issue, and I'd like a little more information around, okay, are we trying to achieve compliance with a regulation? And what is the purpose of that regulation? Where does it hit the ground in terms of safety? Right? So, I mean, we're not regulated by PUC, I don't believe. So is there a real need to meet a requirement of theirs? there's a, and I don't know,
I'll let Graham cover that
This,
one.
we are absolutely subject to this. This is one of the exceptions from our exemption from PUC. This particular interconnection policy, it applies everybody. And, you know, we've been working, Dan and Steve Smith have been working really hard to try and accommodate our existing solar interconnection policy with these regulations as much as possible to make this sort of changes the least disruptive as possible, because I keep coming in and saying, copy and paste it, do exactly what the PUC says, and they've spent a lot of time and energy to try and work through this problem, and
so this is like an engineering standard.
it's absolutely an engineering, and it really comes from FERC. The PUC was sort of kind of compelled to adopt through FERC's small interconnection regulations. And so it's basically, you know, we have to report annually on numbers of level 1, level 2, and level 3 connections and stuff like that. We've met all of our reporting requirements, but our filters, the PUC said, these are the filters that you will use when you are determining whether or not somebody is allowed to interconnect level 1 or interconnect level 2 or interconnect level 3. And so that's kind of where we've really sort of hit this bubble.
So I'm a little worried about asking this question. But if that is the case, and we are discovering that, if you will, recently, have we been out of compliance prior to this?
We're a little bit behind in trying to get to this.
So we're catching up on our compliance.
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
And even, I mean, these are things that from an engineering standpoint, we'd be doing regardless of a PUC requirement. I want to make that clear as well. This just made it very clear that this is what we need to be doing. We'd, like Graham said, we've pushed the envelope pretty hard, sort of skipped right over level 1 review, went to supplemental type of requirements immediately to allow more and be as flexible as we can. We even evaluated options on a non-grid export type of system and kick some things around that. It's like, well, maybe we can make requirement at 80% of, hey, put a system in, but it has to be non-grid export, and that will slow the train down, so to speak, allow more people to put systems in. And, you know, Steve and I worked through a few scenarios, and somebody's going to come to us and say, well, if I could put that in, isn't your limit 90? Why can't I just do this without batteries up to 90 again? I'd say, well, you can, and I wouldn't have grounds to stand on to require a non-export system. Although I'd love people to do it, and we're going to incentivize people to do that through other means, like I said, to slow the train down a little bit to stretch it out. But there's, you know, we're coming up with some battery incentive type programs, and if we can focus more on getting batteries into places that already have solar, you know, if somebody adds solar plus batteries again, that doesn't help. It doesn't hurt if they're absorbing all of it. It just sort of stays neutral. But if we can convince people that already have solar to put batteries in, that's a help.
So I have 2 more questions. One is, what is the safety, the fundamental safety issue here that this is trying to avoid?
Yeah, we could have a line fall into the ground and not have enough fault current to trip my fuse, and that line could stay energized on the ground.
So you have a downline, somebody could encounter it, it won't be shut off,
Right.
they could get electrocuted.
And that's going to be typically towards,
Dan,
Yes.
we need to talk about how the line could go down and start a fire.
yeah,
It's not just about
that as well. It sits there in our
We've seen that
office.
more often than an
Yeah.
electrocution.
Any downline that's
Yeah.
energized is.
It's a bad. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to make sure Dan
Yeah,
explains
yeah,
the full
that's-
risk of what this means.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that's all. So, okay, so the third question is, if we were not in the tri-state contract at the moment, would we have other options to resolve this that would be a benefit to our members?
Yes.
More options?
Yeah. And I think we got some options coming.
Are those,
Even
are
within-
the options that we think might be coming within that contract more costly, more difficult, more convoluted? Or would it be simpler and easier for all of us should we not be a part of this contract?
I think it could be the other way. It could be simpler to have the backing of a firming energy management company behind it already, and then just simply put it in, as opposed to, it could go either way. I don't want to say one way or the other on that. I think there's going to be some potential room coming up with what they've been proposing to do such projects.
I saw Kirsten's hand up and then it went down, but nothing right now. Okay, thank you.
Can I answer that a little bit too? I mean, Dan, I think what he's trying to get at too is that, like, we see United putting in batteries at their substations to help with some of this. They can't do some of what they want because of tri-state contract. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, I think there could be more opportunities out there without this restrictive contract, just because of how they're telling United no on battery storage. Because I think battery storage is definitely going to help. I mean, that's what we've been talking to other utilities about. It is expensive. The prices are going down on batteries. So yes, I personally see there are some restrictive prohibitions in the current contract putting in batteries. We've seen that. And that could be a factor of, if, let's say, you did find some way to get out of the contract or create flexibility, there could be ways you could mitigate this differently. Correct. And Dan said energy management system, but any energy management system provider could provide that. That's not just Tri-State. You could actually go with somebody else that could assist as well. So just to be clear on that point.
Thank you.
Sorry. Rachel, did you were you in the queue?
I'm doing some research about my questions.
We'll come back. John, did you have one?
Yeah, so just to summarize that comment, so you're saying that the existing tri-state contract is creating a safety issue for our members?
I'm saying that it restricts us from being able to potentially resolve this issue in a safe manner.
Close enough. I'll take it. I think of course, safety first, second, and third. Period. No need to speak further on that. I would just encourage you to avoid solutions that restrict our members from being able to do what they want. And I understand and appreciate and support that for engineering reasons, you have to hit pause and you can't just do whatever you want whenever you want. But this is an engineering problem. There's an engineering solution. Let's not get mired in it's expensive, it's hard, I don't like it. And stay focused on solving problems so that members can come in, build what they want to build, do what they want to do without being told no for policy reasons. And stay focused on the engineering and find the engineering reasons. And if it's expensive, it's expensive. We're finding out that our grid is not set up for where the members want to go over the next 10 years, and we have to make changes to the infrastructure, whether that's batteries at the substation level, right, or other technical solutions. Let's start investing in those changes as quickly as possible. And if that has knock-on effects like rate changes and evolutions, or one more reason to dogpile the exit, so be it. Thank you.
Joe.
Couple of basic questions. So, Jessica, in your memo, you said the battery was like $3 million or something like that, and that was just for one substation.
Yeah, but remember, these batteries are large. So,
Okay.
yeah, those ones at substations are pretty significantly sized.
Right. And I guess my question is, so, I mean, can we knock off, so to speak, one substation at a time? I mean, if money was no object, we'd have to do, like, we take the substations that were most critical for the city, right? And we put a battery there. It's not like we put batteries in all our substations.
Correct, yeah, and I know that's what they're doing. They're looking into that. Where to focus time and energy. I mean, it's going to cost money. As you saw, our capital plan was already pretty significant because we have an old system. And so we need to keep on top of updating the old system. So then when you start adding a $3 million battery, yeah, it just starts keeping the increase the cost, and then that increase our interest, and then we're gonna have to raise rates. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say in order to accommodate all these changes.
What kind of timeline, the solutions you're talking about? Because I've gotten some questions about, well, when's this gonna end? Are we looking at a year or 2 years or 6 months? Do we have any way to quantify that?
Yeah. Even if I could start an engineering project on that today, you're looking at least 18 months out before something like that goes in. So I wouldn't, 2-year timeframe is probably an adequate estimate. I mean, we are starting on projects to address this now under the assumption we're going to have ability to do it later.
Okay. And what do you anticipate, or what are you hearing from installers now? I mean, are they beating you up, or?
Of course. I don't want to be clear too. We did start this communication with installers way back in December. So we started this early. We didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out at the time, so we couldn't tell them that. Oh, and by the way, these are going to be the red zones. Instead, it's like, hey, just so you know, we are reaching this threshold. We're hitting these types of walls. We're evaluating all the options we possibly can. We want to do more research, and so we've got some feedback from the installers at the time. We're like, yeah, okay, that's going to be an incentive to put batteries in. Maybe the business model shifts some from more solar focused to more battery focused. And if we can have the right pairing of some type of incentive, we're going to be nowhere close to paying. I want to make sure it's clear to everybody, we're not going to have an incentive that pays for a battery. I mean, that's not going to likely pencil out unless we all, unless you as a board says, hey, this is what we want to do. But that could be. And so we want to make sure that, we do have some options out there for the members that hit on that.
And just for clarity, I mean, this is something, you've been sort of anticipating this, but the significant increase during 2023, and then better technology to monitor what's going on. That's why we've taken a big, fast leap to get where we are now.
Yeah, it could just take one large system to go from plenty of room to nowhere.
Rachel, I know you were are you still researching?
No, I think I figured it out. I want to have an offline conversation about virtual power plants and understanding some physics. That's my limitation, I'm realizing. But I guess a question I have pertinent to this is what are some communities we can look to that have already dealt with this? And are kind of models or successful? I mean, I'm sure y'all are looking at that, but just so I can educate myself.
Yeah, we've certainly been on the phone with Steve, especially has been on the phone with a lot of these folks looking at IREC, NREL, IEEE, talking to utilities in California, Vermont, Arizona, and most recently Hawaii. Because obviously they're probably the ones that are experiencing this the most on how they're managing some of those things. And yeah, everybody has a limit on what you can do with solar only. Solar plus batteries, you can extend it further. Batteries isn't going to cover you all the way through the night. It's going to stretch the windows out a little bit. So there's still going to be a limit to that, but it broadens what you're able to do. So we're absolutely looking for all best practices. And that's what I was saying earlier. We talked to all these guys, and when they started saying, talk to this guy, it's like, oh yeah, we talked to him last week. Talked to quite a few.
Ollie? Oh, sorry, just 1 second. Rachel wasn't quite done.
Sorry. And then I think, oh gosh, I just lost it. And then my next question was, in those inquiries, it's interesting looking at that map, how there's the yellow zones and the red zones and then the white zones. And so have you run into any communities where the utility or some sort of partnership with the group on the ground has been able to help incentivize and push build towards the white zones?
Can I answer that? Because that's what I did at my last company.
Oh, okay.
So at Snohomish, we had this issue, sort of, not exactly with solar, but we actually had a map of our feeders and a location where we actually needed people to put in usage to better have physics flow across the lines, just with where our hydro was located. And so we actually produced those maps, which we can do the same thing. But we did give kind of incentives to say, well, if you locate here, we'll like maybe do a discount on your interconnection. So, I mean, but you gotta remember that we had over almost 400,000 meters. So you can actually spread an incentive a lot better over 400,000 versus 40,000. You can feel it a lot harder when you do it with a smaller group of people. But there could be ways where, you know, you just make sure you have, you maybe talk to the Economic Alliance or something, because that's the other thing we did, talk to the Economic Alliance and Chambers and said, if you hear a big companies coming into our area, have them come talk to us first, because we'll overlay a map to show where it would reduce their cost of interconnection potentially, because they don't have to do costly upgrades, because we do need locations there. So yeah, it does happen quite a bit. Yeah, good question.
You ready, Holly?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I think I should probably know this, but batteries that are in the home, are they behind the meter?
Yes.
Okay, and the reason why I ask is, at the last Electricity 101, Holy Cross did a really great presentation about battery storage in the home. And they funded theirs through a REST grant, the Rural Energy Savings Program grant, and that's through the USDA. But the interesting thing is they had more than 600 early adopters without even putting any information out about it. And 600 people installed the batteries. And so on November 1st, they were going to actually start outreach to their membership. It'll just be interesting to see what happened with that.
Yeah, we're in constant contact with Holy Cross and
Right.
meet with them weekly.
Well, another thing that was interesting to me is Pitkin County now requires an installation of a battery with EV on certain size homes. So that's one other thing to maybe think about. Thank you.
Great. Who else? John?
If you're willing to spend $3 million on that substation battery, why aren't you willing to break that up and provide the incentive to distribute that?
Yeah, that's options on the table as well.
So, I mean, I think it's 20 right now, it's 18, 24 weeks for delivery on home scale batteries.
Yeah.
You could have your $3 million battery built in 9 months.
Yeah, so Dan's working and his team's working with Holy Cross on that, but Green Mountain Power, if anybody's interested, they're probably the premier utility in the US on solar and batteries. Go to their website. There may be even information about virtual power plants on that, Rachel. But to your point, John, yeah, it's great to see where those others go because they've created workable systems. So that's what Dan's team is looking at. Yeah.
And I think you bring up a great point there. You said, if we're willing to spend $3 million, that's the whole question here. Is that where we as a board stand when we can bring a budget to you and show you, hey, here's a solution for that? Is that where we want to go?
I don't think that there's any scenario where we're not spending $3 million. Absent saying, no, you can no longer build solar into these, down these lines, period. Right? You're at capacity, so you have two options. No, or upgrade the infrastructure. So that is an inevitability. Right?
If that's the source you want, there's sources that don't require that.
If you're going to allow the members to continue to install solar as they wish, you will upgrade the system.
But who's responsible for paying that? That's
right. And so you can push that back onto the members and you can say, well, you guys have to pay for that whole 9 yards. Right? And now you're getting into the business of saying no to members, right? Which I think is a difficult place to go. And so I don't see how you're not faced with some upgrades here in any scenario. So to me, I look at this and I think, okay, well, if I'm going to spend $3 million, what's the best way to spend $3 million? Not, can I avoid spending?
Or would you rather spend that $3 million on a power source that's more of a 24/7 power source? Or a solar power source that's all, centrally located, that's made to do that? It gets you more bang for the buck.
I think if you're dealing with a hypothetical 5 years down the road, 6 years down the road conversation, that becomes interesting. But if you're looking inside of 2 years, I don't think that door's open. And so I think saying, well, we should have an answer for you by the end of the decade I don't really think that that's a viable starting place for a conversation. So I think we need to start having a more pointed conversation about those capital projects and opening up, okay, how much are we going to spend for these capital projects? How much are we going to spend to invest in this approach? What is the best use of that capital? Not this agitated sense of, is this a good idea? Right? And I think if I would like to see a comeback that says, okay, we want to be able to say yes to all of our members, period. That's the ideal. You can't achieve the ideal. Right? So let's back off from the ideal. And if you come and say, well, we want to do some upgrades to our substations, and we want to provide some relief, and we want to provide some engineering, and that's going to be $20 million. That's a conversation I'd like to have, and I'd like to see what that $20 million buys us, both in terms of actual raw infrastructure upgrades, but as well as providing great service to our members, which I think is somewhat getting lost in these conversations. So we should be saying yes to our members. If Fuller wants to build solar, you should be able to build solar. If you want to put some batteries in your ranch, put some batteries in your ranch. You should not be in the business of saying no to our members. And so let's have a real conversation about what that money buys us and how we pay for it and what that impacts rates, what that impacts our debt to equity ratios. This is the conversation I think is valuable, not should we do this, or let's look at some far-flung ideas. And
you're right on.
Not starters.
Yeah. Tim.
Yeah, I'll go, but I also see Rachel, or not Rachel, Kirsten. Yeah, I mean, I think you're hitting a nail pretty squarely on the head, John. But I think we're in a position where we are constrained by a particular contract and particular dynamic vis-a-vis that contract. And what I keep thinking about is, if we didn't have some of those constraints, what would we be doing to get to yes, if you will? And what is actually best for all the members? I mean, this is not just an investor-owned utility. It's not about putting back, additional profits in a couple of shareholders' pockets. This is about our membership as a co-op, right? What is the overall best opportunity for our members? And sometimes that isn't putting solar, right? I mean, I'm probably being a heretic here, but that isn't always putting solar on the rooftop of the house, right? It is potentially doing more of community solar gardens and things like that. And we're very constrained on what we can and cannot do as a result of the straitjacket that we live in, called Tri-State, right? And so there is a more strategic look at how do we address that in a short term, like you're talking about. But aren't there very innovative ways that we could think of? Could LPEA, for example, buy batteries at a lower cost, sell them at a lower cost to our members? That's a financial aspect that doesn't really sort of hurt the other members as much as maybe a $20 million or $3 million investment. I think application of some creative ideas, and not just from us, we're all creative folks, but and so are the staff, but getting out and asking in the marketplace like you're doing with other co-ops and other utilities, and looking at this on a sort of shorter term and a longer term basis. What is the idea? What is it that we're really trying to achieve here for our members? What is the members' input? I think, and I'll go back to this again, time and again, we should be engaging our members more on these conversations. What they want, what they don't want. Right? What does it look like? And because if we assume too much, we have some risk for all of us. Anyway.
Yeah, moving on to Kirsten.
Thank you, Ted. John, I can't really hear you at all, but I'm able to read the transcript and get a pretty interesting idea of what I think it said. And Tim, you're every other word. So if I'm repeating something, please forgive me. I think I heard John say that we're not in the business of saying no to our members, and actually frequently we are, for safety reasons or cost reasons. And we have a line extension agreement that says, okay, if you want to do this, great, but it's going to cost you that. So it's it's part of the business. Certainly 80 years ago when we first started, we got to say yes a heck of a lot more because we were desperate for members. I think now we also have to though weigh in all of the membership and what that means. And Tim, I missed some of what you were saying about, I think you were saying there's a lot of possible solutions out there, and let's make sure we're including our members in that. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that was part of what I said, yes.
Yes.
Yes, can you not hear
I
me?
can read that. Okay.
I was shouting, sorry.
Here's Sean, I think Kohler, you were.
So after listening to John, I have a question as far as causation, and if it seems like this is one-sided, it's towards the solar folks, but there's a lot of members, the majority that are not into solar and can't afford it. And yet this causation is by the ones that are doing it. So can we set ourselves up for a discriminatory lawsuit on our rates if we're making the ones that aren't using it pay for the ones that are using it? That's a question. I think that needs to be looked at as well as how does this 3 million we're gonna spend, who's gonna come up with that 3 million? That would be a question now.
Is that to me, to her?
Well, I don't know, I just putting it out there as a comment, so it's.
I think maybe these two could take a stab at it. I mean, my response is we're already in that position. It just may not be dramatic or out there, right? I mean, we're already, every member doesn't pay exactly what they owe, right? We don't have that methodology. The people who are farther out don't pay for their transmission. And so we're totally in that situation, but I completely respect the comment. You get too lopsided in that, then maybe it's a lawsuit, maybe it's not a lawsuit, maybe it's just dissatisfaction, which probably from our perspective is just as important, right? We're here to serve the members. We want to satisfy the members as best we can. So whether it's creating that dissatisfaction or risking a lawsuit, I think it's a fair thing for us to always be evaluating, and largely this comes up in, and I know everyone's anxious, and when these kind of things come up quickly, it's hard to react, and we do have to have a little bit of patience there because we are gonna do a deep dive into our rate setting, and that'll give us another opportunity to look at levels of discrepancy, how people are how we're literally subsidizing things, and that's just part of the way we make decisions. So we're gonna have opportunities to get in deeper to that stuff, and keep bringing it up.
Well, I think that consideration is important, just like the survey that's in our packet.
Yeah.
Number one was affordability.
Yeah.
And that is key.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Super. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've created this problem ourselves with our policy of allowing solar 120%. And I think a very quick solution would be to change that policy to, it appears to me that it's not a voltage problem, it's the daytime production without any uptake. And take the average, if somebody wants to put solar in, take their average daytime use and limit their solar installation at that amount. And that would be net metered to their daytime and it'd be online at night.
Fortunately, Colorado law will disagree with you.
I don't agree.
Yeah, however, we brought this up, and that's where Dan tried to have the net metering policy limit. So we're the most generous co-op in the state of Colorado for how much we give back to people who install solar. And so it's a huge incentive to install solar. And so with all the tax subsidies out there as well, and grants, that's what created the 60% penetration, right? It's a good problem to have, honestly, but it does come with the risk and the problem as well. So Dan was trying to mitigate that with the net metering policy. I think what we heard from the board though, is that we needed to do more work on it. And so we are gonna bring back another net metering policy to the board after we do this cost of service study that we're hiring soon. The consultants to do that will happen this year. And then that goes into what Ted mentioned, is that it's a bigger rate discussion that we need to have the board weigh in on. So rates, to Cole, to your point, you know, we are doing a lot of member surveys, to Tim's point. This was just the beginning of it that we did to all membership. We gave them the survey. We had a big response. We're going to do more and more of those. We have focus groups lined up. Amanda's working with local entities that conduct focus groups, because you have to do it unbiased. So you really need to find a third party to do this. So those are going to start pretty immediately to ask the question of, what does it mean to you? What does affordability mean to you? Does it mean you would agree to 100% carbon? Is that what you want? So it's really digging into those issues of what does our membership want from us, right? I'm sorry?
What did they expect?
What did they expect from us? Yeah. So all that, we're trying to gather all that data for all of you, so that when you have the data on the cost of service study and the rates, then you can understand what the majority of our membership expects from us. So I hope that helps. So we're just doing a lot of data gathering right now for all of you.
Yeah. That's pretty good, and I really, I'm trying to speak out really loudly. I'm sorry, I can't get much louder than this. Getting old. So the expectation around the dialogue with members, I think, is not purely a staff-related issue, right? I mean, we are the elected members, and in a cooperative, the elected board is the expectation that every cooperative principle says, we as the directors are the link to our members, right? We're elected accordingly. We're supposed to be there. And while I very much appreciate effort by staff to survey on specific issues and so forth, when it comes to strategic issues that might affect policy going forward, we have to be involved, right? So I'm advocating for more town hall type things, more real dialogue with our members. And it's not one way, it's about dialogue, right? And we, I think, owe it to as part of our fiduciary duty, to get out and meet with them, hear that. And we will need, I think, staff support in order to create those opportunities. We did this as part of the power supply discussion we had several years ago. We came out, we talked, we presented, we listened. We need to get back to that, in my opinion. I think that was put off because of pandemic issues and so forth, but I hope we'll get back to that. One last thing is, any of these investments that we make or try to provide for our members in terms of that increased load or batteries, there is a payback mechanism, which is to reduce demand in our very big demand period in the evening, right? So there is a financial way to do this, to make that affordable, to get back that investment, right? At least from my perspective. And I think we owe it to ourselves to focus on some of that sooner than later, because this isn't a problem that's going to go away, nor do I think member sentiment is going to want us to delay that farther than we need to, right? So we need to get creative soon about what is a new situation and a different situation in a way that shows we are trying our best to make progress. And I'm not saying that any of the staff are not doing that. I know Dan has worked, and his staff and the engineers are working their tail off on this, as well as others, and I really want to appreciate that. So, thank you. Sorry if I'm yelling.
That's perfect. I'm gonna get the ball.
I think that's a really important distinction, that this is not, we're not just looking at subsidies here, we're looking at investment in our future infrastructure. And these things can be synonymous, like they can be happening in tandem. I also think from an engineering perspective, it's totally reasonable to say some members yes and some members no, but from a cooperative perspective, it's hard to say, you're allowed to do this, you're allowed to ascribe to this program, and you're not. So I think that's kind of tough as a cooperative, making that
John?
I just want to sort of double back to Dan's comment. This problem is made that we cannot solve this problem so long, and we cannot serve our members over the next decade and a half, so long as we remain tri-state. Period. They cause this problem because we can't solve these problems economically any other way but hamstringing our members, as you suggest. I mean, we cannot solve this problem long-term. We cannot make long-term investments until we eject from tri-state. The longer we spend screwing around in this limbo with partial buyouts and, you know, pretending to be friends when we know we're getting divorced, like, let's just get the hell out of tri-state, and then we can start solving these problems for real. The dominant problem here is tri-state. It is not a member who wants to install solar on their rooftop because they're trying to do the right thing for their family. That they are not the cause of this problem. That family is not the cause. The cause is tri-state, and from that flows an inability to make good engineering decisions because of the cost constraints related to those good engineering decisions. That's what drives this problem for real. And we need to get out of tri-state now.
All right, I'm gonna do my quick wrap up on that because, you know, a lot of like, okay, there's this problem and that problem, and you guys know me well enough to know that I'm optimistic and positive, and I don't want to overlook the positive thing here, which is, and Jessica put it in her email, like some houses are serving 100% of some substations with solar power sometimes during the day/year. Right? That's a win. It's really cool to at least conceptually be able to think about, you know, the things we've done, you know, pre my time for sure, but with net metering and relating to our members has allowed that to be accomplished. That's pretty cool. Another positive thing, change happens when you feel pain. And we have red blobs on a map. That's pain. It's a pretty easy definition. And that's going to make change happen. No, it's the wrong, yeah, this is a different pick. This is not our pick. This is lower pain. Yeah, these are not heart-shaped zones. No. And you know, and people rise to the occasion, and I know, you know, Dan and staff will rise to this occasion. Like, as an engineer myself, I see this as a fun problem to solve, right? There's so much technology that relates to exactly this problem. Man, this problem snuck up on us a little bit, but we are not, to Rachel's point, other communities, the first people to see the problem with the duck herd, you know? So it can be solved. We're gonna be more aggressive at solving it now that it's shown up in red on some maps. And you know, largely because we're gonna be getting phone calls from members about, you know, we have people sitting here today, and we have people who made comments earlier, you know, that we're not gonna, that's not gonna stop today. It's gonna keep going. So we have a lot of motivation to figure out the solution. You know, we have a lot of talent to figure out the solution. You know, I'll ride on John's comment a little bit. We've got to look at what the problem is too, right? We can't solve this, you know, just with little trivial things. We have to look at the big picture and be willing to really dig in on that. So, you know, I guess my point there was, there's some good here. You know, we got this done, whatever this is, 100% coverage, faster than even Dan expected, right? You know, he blinked his eyes and we have full circuits. So it also points to what our membership can accomplish if incentivized properly. And you know, that's where we have to be really careful, right? Because if we point them in a certain direction and say, go do it, here's net metering, they're probably going to get it done, and in this case, faster than expected. So, you know, we have to realize that there is a lot of power in our membership and incentivizing that in the direction that it should be. You know, this whole say yes, you know, say yes to the members. You know, I you know, certainly hear and respect Kirsten's comment that sometimes we have to say yes, but you know, it can't always be full yes. And that's sort of our job, is to think all of that through and decide where it's yes, but, where it's no. So that's the end of mine. I think maybe Dan was gonna wrap up too.
One, Dan, lift the belly up with it a little bit.
That's what it's for.
You know, just to put a little more of an exclamation point on that, we aren't just sitting here idle, not doing anything on this. The projects we've been talking about in Pagosa, these are the pilot projects that can help solve this problem. So we have got 2 in-phase systems now online inside the house that we are trying to manipulate and do the kind of things that we need to do to solve this type of problem. So there's number one. And I mentioned the grant, the greater grant, that we are focusing that effort on Riverview Substation. And, you know, yeah, that's the kind of thing we want to do. We're taking leaps of faith, knowing that we're going to be there and be able to do it by the time we get there. And so we're stacking up those things, getting ready to do it. So it's just, yeah, pause button for a little bit here, and we'll make room.
Okay, I'll give Rachel the last word on this.
Well, it's not gonna be all open, it's just a question. I'm sure we have communications out on this, yeah? Is it, well, it's real technical, and I can see people seeing red blobs, and they're just gonna attach the red blobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Brian and I and Amanda were working on this morning. And actually I wanted to wait to send it until we had this conversation, so that I could get any other points, maybe just to refine the message. But yeah, it's gonna be really simply put, really. And congratulations, like at the beginning, because I think that's the point, is that this is not bad news. This is what our membership wanted, so they got it. But it does create some issues that we're resolving, so, yeah.
Okay, Tim gets the last word.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, in that communication, is there a way to link this to carbon reductions? I mean, you know, we have a goal around achieving a certain level. This obviously contributes. If we're meeting some neighborhood loads at certain times, is there a way to calculate how that is beneficial?
Yeah, we can do that. I just want to be a little careful, because the carbon goal also includes 70% affordability, and we're not meeting that right now. So I don't want it
But that's a different.
to get people to get caught, because we're going to say the carbon goal, you have to say the whole thing.
Well, you can just point to the greenhouse gas reduction value of this generation.
Yeah, I can do that. Okay.
Great. Now we're still in the middle of dashboard.
Yes.
Are we done? Yeah. But no, thanks a lot. I think, you know, this is really like super important discussion and well worth spending, you know, time. You know, one of the ways you can tell it's important discussion is there's large participation. Everybody cares about this. And so, you know, clearly we're spending the time on,
Yeah.
then we'll move on.
Well, and we knew that, again, I want to echo, it was a good conversation. We appreciate everybody's feedback on that. Okay, so again, we're gonna work on the white space. So the crews are still working really hard on O&M, which is great, and capital projects. As you can see, 8% has already been completed. Still getting material on time, sort of. We still have some, I think, bigger transformers, longer lead times, but otherwise we're doing well on all that. And then for the month of January, we met all of our SAIDI and safety goals. And 29 unplanned outages is about normal during this time. Yes.
So one of the comments in here has with the member jobs slowing down. What's behind that? Is it you getting fewer jobs, or is there?
We're getting fewer requests for interconnections, yes.
Okay.
I could guess on why that is, but I don't know.
It's not weather or
No.
material.
I'm assuming it's interest rates. Because what I've heard from realtors, now I'm going way out of my zone, is that, actually, Patrick and I just met with the Colorado Bank, and the CEO was telling us that nobody's getting mortgages anymore for about, what, the $400,000, $500,000 range.
That's right.
Anything over, they're paying cash. And so if you think about it, it's just construction is slowing down. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, again, we'll put a pretty picture here, because this one's really gonna be empty. most of the time, because a lot of this work we actually have to talk about in executive session. And we did, as you saw, thank you for all those that attended the FAC. I thought that was a great turnout to talk about, this isn't on this one, but on the CTP numbers. We'll report on that next month, but this one was the sunny side update, okay? This one is busier. Again, there's a lot of outreach work being done, but as Tim pointed out, you know, we actually did do town hall meetings during COVID. It was on the partial. So we hosted 4 town hall meetings. I believe I'm looking at the team, 1 in each district. So the plan was to do that again. Oh, Tim's not, dang it. When we had more information, it's really hard to have a town hall meeting when we can't inform the public of factual information. So we're intending on hosting those, but we really need more details. And you'll hear in executive session another small delay that's happening on that. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
On the one question survey, how many emails were sent out, do you know?
Well, to every single member. So how many was that? Just about 27,000.
So, okay.
That we had emails for. Oh,
Right.
I mean, that's the also problem. It's really, Elizabeth's team, they're really, any member that calls, I believe we're asking to update their information because we have a lot of people with outdated emails.
Okay, I just want to be careful about how much, I mean, this is not statistically valid
Exactly.
at all.
Completely.
And so
Yes.
even though it came in 4th, I don't think we should take that as a, you know, as something that's accurate.
Yeah, this is not statistically valid information.
Okay.
You are correct because it's not a randomized.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a randomized.
Yeah, but I mean.
Actually.
Yeah, but.
Yeah.
And then just a comment, I attended Dan's, if we're on community partners, this is where we talk to people and stuff like that. Well, I just want to say, Dan, I went to Dan's presentation at FLC. Was it last week, Dan?
Yeah, see, that was in February.
So that'll be recorded next month.
Oh, that'll be recorded next month. Anyway, he gave a great
Yeah.
great presentation, and he did, something came up that I hadn't heard, maybe I missed this, but the panels at Sunnyside are bifacial. And that means that they get energy from the ground and from the sun. So it was like, wow, I didn't realize that could happen. Anyway,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
I think most solar installers are doing that because Dan and I have been meeting with a few and they're all talking about putting those in. So.
Sorry to
No,
interrupt yours.
Okay, so back on the power supply preference survey, you're right, but that is a good two-way communication, so take it for what it is. 374 of our members randomly went ahead and took that, and they said that those 374 ranked affordability as the top one. So again, we're not stopping here. Tim, I mentioned we did conduct town hall meetings for the partial without us during COVID, because they were virtual. We did 4 in each district, and we're planning on doing more town halls, but we don't have all the data to actually give factual information to. But that is part of the plan, is to conduct town halls in every district again for that, as soon as we can.
And town halls are two-way, so I want to hear,
Yeah,
not just tell.
yeah, which is what we did on all the other town halls.
I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, I totally agree with you, I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Yep,
Place to go back.
absolutely.
I also, you know, wonder if renewables was like carbon free.
So that was another question we brought up. So that's why we're gonna keep digging into these more. So we just mentioned this is not statistically valid, as a, you know,
It's
but
an indicator.
it's an indicator, correct?
Definitive.
Right, but it does show you, I mean, we know this from our two-way communication with just day-to-day numbers, is that affordability is important, paying their electricity bills is important to them, so. No question, okay? Yeah.
In December, I had mentioned the Bill Pagosa group. And they had expressed some interest in having you come to speak to the future business leaders.
Yeah.
Has there been any inroads in that?
I don't think they've contacted us again about that. Yeah, Amanda's been helping with that, I'll have to check.
And in January, I asked if we are approaching the fire district in
Yes.
Artillery County. Has any inroads been made in that?
Jerry?
What was that, Holly? I heard.
The fire district.
Yeah. Because we're working with La Plata's fire district, are we doing anything with Archelaus?
We are working really close with the emergency operations manager, Ryan Foster over there. And he was part of the fire crews before he took Mike LaRue's position. So he's like our main resource.
Yeah, and Jerry, didn't we give Bill Pagosa $10,000 last year in his sponsorship program? And wasn't that Garrett's golf?
Yes.
Yeah, so
I think that's what it
they raised over 10,000, so we've really been donating quite a bit to that organization as well. Just make sure you do that.
Yeah, I see you do a lot of speaking around the country and stuff, so it'd be really cool to get you over there.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, next slide. All right, Patrick.
Come over here and hopefully I can be heard a little bit better. So January, exciting financial month. We did a little bit of calisthenics. When we finished out the budget process for 2024, we had a couple scenarios. There was a scenario with a tri-state rate increase, and then there's a scenario without a tri-state rate increase. Well, we ended up with what I would call a hybrid scenario. We don't have a rate increase that has come through from tri-state, but we have passed a rate increase on to our members. And there's also risk that tri-state's rate increase won't be approved, at which point we will credit members back. So what have we done to handle this problem? We have deferred the 4% tri-state rate increase, meaning it is not hitting top line revenue. That is hitting the liability account. So that liability account and that in the instance of tri-state being denied a rate increase, we can now issue credits out of that liability account rather than chalking revenue at that point in the future, whenever that might be. I've heard anything from March to April, but I think that's kind of an open-ended question as to when FERC is actually going to make a decision on that. So that being said, what you are looking at is a scenario without a 4% rate increase budget and actual. So we move that money into that liability account. That being said, residential sales were up 1%, commercial sales were up 1%, revenue still had a strong performance. Margins were robust, but I would be cautious in being too celebratory about that. Of the $400 and some odd thousand in excess margins over budget, $256,000 is from operating expenses. A lot of that's timing variance, and that timing variance, meaning the expenses were budgeted in January, they didn't get actually spent. We plan to spend those dollars. I'm going to continue to say, be cautious. We know you're planning to spend these dollars. Don't look at this budget and think, hey, this is all gravy. You need to continue your cautious path. So we expect some of that budget variance to come into line with the budget as we move forward. January is a hard month to be too precise on, so there's some budget variance that we're dealing with there, but it is on the positive side. And with that, I'll open some questions.
Mine will be.
That was a quick draw, but Rachel beat me.
So just clarifying, if credits are issued, these are not like the 20-year first in, first out capital credits. This would literally be immediate.
It will be exactly, it will be how you were billed. You will get credited back that 4% increase.
So you said 1% for the increases, but your report says residential sales were 3%.
3%. I'll have to look at that.
And that commercial sales were 2%. So the overall, I think, is closer to 1% because industrial were not.
That is on revenue. I'm talking about kilowatts when I said the 1%.
Oh.
My brain actually, I didn't say it, but my brain is sitting here saying it. So I appreciate you bringing that up because we don't want to mix up our
lot of numbers.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Patrick, when you say something, we think there's a dollar sign.
Not ready kilowatt.
No, that's on what I would call a units metric, so to speak.
Kirsten, I saw a hand. No? Okay. Any other questions for Patrick? Kohler?
So I have this on page 89. And it's that performance statistic, and I was wondering in the January 2024 under irrigation. Just need a little clarification on that, because we have the few more customers. The amount sold per customer was quite a bit less, and the price really jumped to 21.8 cents from 11 cents the year before. I just can't follow how that happened.
Irrigation was one when we did our entry that we were having a hard time getting clean. So what we did is we took 4% of each of the segments, residential, commercial, industrial, irrigation, et cetera, and we reduced those by that 4% amount. When that 4% reduction happened, it was not clean on irrigation. I don't know if Dan has any input on why that is, but that was something that we identified as well, Corey, so I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, and so when irrigation is the hard one, first off, very, very small, percentages off, but we're talking a few $1,000s in that whole rate class. And so they have a large demand charge and energy charge. And so they might use a lot less kilowatt hours, but they could have, if they turned it on, then experienced the demand charge. And so on cost per kilowatt hour gets thrown out the window during low usage months like that, all over that.
That's what I want. Appreciate it.
Tim.
So, because of the timing of the board meeting a little early in this month, we didn't really have the time to go through these numbers at FAC. And actually Kirsten made a suggestion that maybe we should think about looking sometimes 2 months back, right? And looking at these numbers. And so I would just suggest in March, we look back again in January. There are questions, but I don't want to necessarily take up a lot of time here going through some of those.
Absolutely.
I just want
It's a good process.
know, let's do that. In these months, especially where we don't get that data because the billing data doesn't come through and so forth, let's kind of make it a practice to look at that month in the next FAC. So we're having the opportunity to really dig deeper.
That's great. March is also on an early schedule, so I appreciate it.
Right, so we'll have more to talk about with
Yes.
So that'd be April.
Yeah. I mean, the month of March, back, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next slide, thank you. All right. No new grants right now that we're pursuing, because staff, like Patrick worked all weekend, on one of them. It's a heavy lift, really heavy lift, which no one tells you about. So that's still going, but that just means that we're potentially getting closer to maybe being awarded one of the larger grants, right? So I don't want to say too much in public session, but it is, it's looking positive on that.
I have just a strategic point about that. I worry when I hear about employees working through the weekend, and I know we're asking for a lot, but we also have budget surpluses we're talking about. And I just worry about burnout. And I think that that's a really real thing. And so, you know, when I was at that Western United meeting in Denver, they were saying, oh yeah, like we doubled our sales and we only hired 10 more employees. And I'm like, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that I really want to think about that. I cringe when I hear employees work all weekend.
Oh, I do too. Yeah, I mean, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's just, just keep in mind, we have some major items we're trying to get across the finish line. And so it would be very helpful if the board recognize that, which I know you do, but understand that we may not be able to get back to you on a lot of answering questions that are not directly related to big ticket items, right? If you think about all the different things we're working, we also have labor negotiations starting April 1st. So please keep that in mind that is a wage reopener, and that's going to take a lot of our time and effort. So we have that, and we have the CDP, the BDP, or the partial, we have the rates, we have the ERP, we have solar. And so if you think of all the things on our plate, we could use more staff because they're getting burned out. We're getting burned out.
Right.
So thank you for saying that, but we're talking through it, so. Okay, anything else on that? All right. Another great picture. Just remembering how they used to put poles in.
We still do that.
You can still do that.
And then sometimes use helicopters too.
Right.
Okay, so if there's no questions on that, or any of the appendix, are there any questions on the
I'm sorry,
appendix?
Kate, if we could back up. So on our negotiations with IBEW.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just a little confused on the timing. I mean, I thought we just did that like.
So just to remind you, we were able to negotiate a 5-year contract, which is longer than we've had in the past, but in agreement for that, we had to come back after 2 years to do a wage reopener. So this is only looking at wages, that is it. So, yep, yes.
Okay, I missed this and prepare for the future. Let's see, the DERMS says that integration work has been initiated on the DERMS platform. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So we've talked about Blue, probably in the past, you may recognize that name. There's also another name, Virtual Peaker, that's an integration platform that is going to allow LPEA to send one signal to say, hey, I want to shed 500 kW. And it sends out all the different devices that it's able to control and does that. So we are in that configuration stage right now, especially focusing on the EVs and the water heaters and backup energy storage systems. And so that's part of the pilot project we're also doing over in Pagosa Springs. This will be the first thing that we channel through that we have control over, that we're playing.
So this is focused on Pagosa solely right now. It's not there was the water heater project with the.
Oh, I wouldn't say it's focused strictly on that. That's one of the projects that feeds into it. Yes, we're trying to solve the other water heaters into it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the dashboard? We're gonna need to do a little, yeah, go ahead, Holly.
Just a quick comment, there is some incredible work being done on Yellow Jacket Pass to get ready for the rebuild. Like, they're clearing the line, making it nice and pretty, and it's been going on for like 2 months. And it's a little sad 'cause there's some really pretty trees going down, but you know the outcome is what it's for.
Yeah,
But
thanks for that
it's
comment.
it's an impressive project.
Dan's good.
Well, so I'm just gonna, maybe later, because we've got Matt, and I think we're just needing to.
Yeah, we need to do a little agenda shuffle. And so if nobody has a complaint about this, we'll move board action to after executive session. I will still give us a 10-minute break, maybe 8. And then we'll go up to attorney report.
So do you want me to tell them 10:50?
10:50.
Okay,
10:50, we'll have Matt for the public update.
so make sure we have time. Yeah.
So, go break. That's what we're talking about. Now that you see, when you get there, everyone's quiet.
They know I know how to use it.
That's right. It's for more than just,
His nickname was Full.
yeah. All right. We have Matt, we have everybody in the room. So go ahead with the public update, Matt.
Great, thanks, Ted. Nice to see you all. So a few updates across several different FERC cases, wanted to all publicly available. Let's start with the Tri-State formula rate case. There was a notice of deficiency given to Tri-State. Tri-State was ordered to respond to a series of FERC questions with regard to mostly direct assignment of certain transmission facilities. Tri-State responded to those questions. LPEA and others provided their responses. We did that last week on February 6th. Everyone that responded, I think there were 6 members in total, were supportive of doing the direct assignment of transmission That is now with FERC. The next step there is that FERC will either accept their rate, they will order them to do the direct assignment and order settlement procedures, or FERC could still potentially reject the rate altogether. So waiting on a decision there. We've engaged and just waiting on what the outcome is there. With regard to the CTP, United Power and Mount Parks formally got their numbers. Since then, in 2 different proceedings, United Power has made filings within the last couple of days. As expected, there's a difference between the calculations in terms of what Tri-State has versus what United Power has. The difference is about $160 million. We're in the process of reviewing that now and can certainly dig into that more in executive session in terms of what next steps look like there. And then a couple other cases going on at FERC. There's a non-executed withdrawal agreement that Tri-State has filed for United to sign. Part of the debate over the calculation is going on in that case. The other part of it's going on in the old CTP case that goes back several years. So that's going on in both instances. And then there's another case about United Power's bridge power that they're working on with Tri-State as part of their Adams County solution. We've intervened in both of those cases. Those cases are just starting, so no specific action been taken there yet. So that's the biggest update on the FERC side. On the state side, we are in the Tri-State ERP. We've jointly intervened with Mountain Parks. We're in a discovery phase of that right now. We have answer testimony due in that case on March the 14th. And that case is then going to proceed to a hearing late this spring. That case is in front of an administrative law judge. Just in terms of how that case works, Tri-State will get its modeling inputs and assumptions for its resource procurement approved in that case. And then Tri-State will actually go out and solicit resources. There's another opportunity for us to engage with comments based on what portfolios Tri-State presents. So that's going on as well. That case kind of in the early stages as it moves forward. There's a number of different interveners there, probably 15, 20 in total, which is not atypical for an electric resource plan case at the PUC. So those are our regulatory updates. I can take any questions before we jump into the executive session.
Not seeing any hands. All right, then next thing is to go into executive session. We need a motion for that.
I move.
Moved by Kohler, seconded by John. All in favor of proceeding into executive session? Aye. Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe we are back in public session.
Dan, can you hit where the participants are so the board can see? All right. Thank you.
All right. And we have no board actions coming out of executive session. So we will circle back up the agenda to 5A, which is Finance and Audit Committee update. You want to tackle that one, Tim?
Sure. It was a really helpful and productive meeting. And as the report to the board indicates, the January financials weren't complete. And since then, Patrick, in our board packet, Patrick had put the finals, so you can see what we did. And then what was really interesting, I think, also was some of the community solar garden options. Dan did another great job of producing an update on that. And their rest was in an executive session for which there was none. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. A lot of you were there.
Anything for Tim? It's not a committee. Okay, move on. Committee on Policies, do you have anything to report on?
Thanks for addressing 109 for housekeeping on that in the consent board items. Our next meeting is February 26th. We'll be tackling policy 129, code and ethics. We'll put that together and any modifications, suggestions, and put that back out in front of the board before it comes in for a vote if it needs to be modified.
That's it. All right. Thanks for that.
Can I just say, that's kind of a monster, so just warning everybody.
Yeah, work's cut out for us. Yeah, yeah, your name's probably the last one on it, so. Okay, good for, board action. And now jumping back down the agenda, past lunch break, section 9 reports. Attorney report, Graham.
Just to record my written report.
Yeah, Dan.
I'd have a question on how the fast track income has been reported. We never did get a payment from fast track, have we?
We didn't get cash paid all the time. We got cash paid for the fast track deal, but offset the asset was the entry. It's not booked as income. But
So there, let me just mention that there
In
was,
past years.
Oh.
Oh.
Past years, how it was booked, the profits, the margins?
Yeah, I don't think we ever received any profits from
We
fast
booked
track.
the income, but cash was not received.
Right,
So the asset would increase.
Right.
Yeah, but there was no cash associated with that income.
okay.
But we're still paying back all that as capital credits. Just to let you know.
Okay, that's, yeah, I haven't heard that. So.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of sort of like over my head financial discussion about how that, how we're dealing with all that. I think it's pretty tidy at this point,
well,
but
after our meeting, or as part of our meeting, decided that that would be presented, I think, at the March FAC, some final, so that there could be a recommendation to board.
yeah, sort of what to do with just for a very poor financial term, what's left over, right? Some will be left
How
over.
what we are paid will be utilized, is how I would say. And if there are decisions or recommendations about excess or surplus.
Right.
But that was sort of part, the staff wanted a little more time to formulate that proposal. And so we decided, as my recollection was, the FAC meeting in March, we would have that discussion.
Coming up.
Right,
Thank you.
exactly, to be presented afterwards to the.
Anything else in response to Graham's attorney report? Seeing none. Any questions regarding the roundup report?
Any questions? So on this, the CEAC and the POC allocations.
Yeah,
Are you guys gonna discuss that or?
yeah, we have a board meeting,
Coming up.
a discussion before the board meeting, and we have a big amount of, we call it money reserves. And there's a great need out there. I sit on CEAC and I do one, every week at Thursday, I do one a month, if not two. And it's 500 a pop, but there's a huge need, an unmet need. We have these reserves. Should we be spending it down? And the same with the roundup money. There is a need. Some months there's not, but other months we go above what we are allocated. Why don't we go above that and spend down those reserves? Because there's no need. And then it's not like you're running a company with a reserve. This is, I'm rounding up to the nearest dollar. Should it be spent on the community? I think it should be, but that's a discussion with the board.
Okay.
So yes,
Remind me again, the CAC and POC money is that a separate pot from the reserves of Roundup?
It's Roundup money, my understanding, and it's automatically allocated out a certain amount, and then that's a reserve as was spent. So like I said, it's 500 pop, mainly for rent, that type of stuff. Instead of somebody having to go, I'm homeless, can the CEAC help? Which is great, I'm glad I'm on that, it helps me keep grounded, it puts me in touch with the community, affordability, etc. But it needs to be addressed. Why hold on to this? That's the question. We give out 500 a week, we have 3,000 reserves of the CAC right now.
We have $50,000 in reserves in Roundup.
Yeah.
And then another 15 on the education grant.
Yeah, so should that be upped or?
And there's no operating budget.
Yeah.
Right.
So green light.
Yeah. It is interesting because there's a distinction between these, like what comes before Roundup tends to be like, we want to send kids to science camp, or we want to, buy instruments. What comes before the POC and the CAEC it's much more fundamental needs. I have a car payment, I'm gonna repo it, I can't make it, so right now we have a formula, which I don't quite remember what it is, but it's a certain amount of Roundup every month goes into the POC and CAEC.
Yeah, CACC.
Yeah, and so we might even look at should we alter that? At least to the point, what is the baseline amount of reserves that we feel like Roundup should have in case there's another pandemic or there's a, wildfire that makes a huge amount of need that, yes, we'd love to have a little pot of money to do that to disperse it, but otherwise, why are we sitting on this money that our members think we're giving away?
Right. Okay, thanks.
I was just gonna say if it's helpful, because I can't remember who I was sitting on there with, but we made that pitch before, that there's a great annual report from SWEEP about its efficacy. Pretty wild how many, I think it's over 80% of people they help stay housed.
Yeah.
So if you want any of that data, I have it.
If you can send that to us, it'd be great. And again, what Rachel said is you're keeping somebody from being a homeless issue in this area. So I think the word is called.
Yeah, and thanks. And David, to your point, I think it is great. More of us will get this opportunity in the future, but being on Roundup and especially being on CEAC or POC, it really is a great reminder of some of the good that this organization does in the community. We sit here and talk a lot about rates and power supply and this and that, but one of our missions is to support the community, and this is like boots on the ground. You really do get to see it. All right, CREA, questions for Holly? Or Holly, anything that you want to specifically point out for us?
No, I'd like to say thank you to Nicole and David for coming up there and spending all day, 12-hour days, a couple of them up there. So that was
I loved it because Holly was there. Nicole.
I also want to thank you for putting that Light Up Navajo presentation in the board packet, because that was given at the lunchtime session on Thursday during the whole long meeting, and it was moving. It was incredible. The guy was really calm and gentle in his demeanor, but you can tell he owned the challenges on the Navajo reservation, and they are astounding. It is absolutely astounding when you look at the need there. So that was, I actually turned to my board table and I said, I'm ready to pull wire myself. So.
Well, we could probably get loaner trucks.
Safety issue.
Yeah, exactly. Next week is the next regular board meeting. There is a legislative meeting tomorrow morning, but they haven't told us what it's about yet, so I don't have that yet. I get reading tonight.
Can I just, so when I was on the CREA-CO call, they were gonna bring up the carbon piece of legislation that's going through the state. So it's actually something about, there's a piece of legislation to prohibit future oil and gas drilling.
They haven't brought that one up yet.
They will, so they're gonna bring that up, that's probably tomorrow, because they wanted the CEO's input, and most of the CEOs were opposing the piece of legislation. And so I would just ask why would CREA step into that? because it'll probably make a lot of people upset. Seriously, so just a thought for you.
All right.
Yeah, maybe you'll be less surprised tomorrow. You might know what they're talking about. Do you have something, Tim?
Yeah, in the legislative bills that we went through, there were a couple that I just wondered if LPEA wants to give any input on. One is this right-of-way permit for broadband equipment utilizing CDOT right-of-ways. And I know the local, Pat Salko, the Olive County Commissioner, is one of the leads on this because essentially, and I brought this up before when I was on the fast track board. Last year sometime, there was this idea of this legislation, right? Basically, CDOT wants to charge a per mile fee for the use of their right of way for broadband. That actually produces a margin for CDOT, and they've altered it somewhat, but it has not been eliminated, if you will. Yeah, it's not just cost recovery. And so this legislation is really affects rural customers, because most data centers are in Denver. You have a per mile cost. Get it to Durango, for example. That's on a more expensive proposition than Lincoln, for example. So I would recommend. I don't know. I think Jessica, you're the one who's delegated this authority in as a CEO, but touching base with Matt and seeing if there is something that we should do in terms of providing a testimony or witness or anything like that. It could have a bad impact on our broadband, so potentially, and maybe get more understanding and see what help, at the very least, providing support for the position would be helpful, especially coming from the co-op, right? The other was this rebate for digital asset purchase. And you mentioned that it's about the Senate program for new data center companies with a minimum of 3 megawatt electric loads. And, data centers are a huge electricity user. And when we're looking for loads or offsetting minimum daytime load or something, are there opportunities there? I don't know. I just think it might be worth looking at.
Bitcoin. Bitcoin miners.
Right, Bitcoin miners, but yes, and other things. Data centers, Amazon puts it in lots of applications and things. So attracting this kind of load in our community, is that a good idea or a bad idea? It's going through, but I think it's something we should think about.
Just in my past job, I actually did a Microsoft data center, an NSA data center, and then a combined data center for another people, et cetera. At the time, it was a big thing for load. They suck load 24/7. They do suck load during your peak. And they do not bring 50 jobs. So that was 3 megawatts, 50 jobs. They bring 4 or 5 jobs and a couple of security guards. So we kind of backed off on pursuing the data centers is because it's expensive to set up. If it's big enough, you're going to have to put a substation there. If it's a Bitcoin, you better get all the cash up front. It's the same issue.
We don't accept payment.
Hey, anything I do capital, I want the money up front. So it sounds good, but 24/7, especially during peak.
Yeah.
So if you're not wanting to worry about Dan pull his hair out more about circuit overload or building substation, et cetera, for the size that we are at, I don't think we really want to pursue.
Yeah, there's a lot of policies across the US prohibiting these going into certain areas because of the issue you brought up. Right.
And I'm not necessarily advocating one way or the other, other than there's something happening. If we have an opinion, I would hope that we would voice that opinion.
Peace out.
So thank you. But, thanks, colleague, you always give really great reports here. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I actually want to just compliment Holly. When I was up there, there's 100 different members, 100 different people at the CREA meeting, and I heard one person say, "Who's that?" And the other person said, "Ask Holly, she'd know." And you do an amazing job of establishing relationships with all the different co-ops. And I just appreciate you representing us up there.
Yeah,
Way to go.
compliment you too. And they actually wanted her to be treasurer, but she pawned it off.
Oh, good.
That was slick.
Tom needed that.
You bet. You don't need that.
All right, we'll move on to Western United. Does anybody have any?
Yeah, I want to answer Kirsten's question. Retiree healthcare coverage. That was a couple of the employees asking the CEO, can they span from when you retired to you hit 65? It wasn't very well developed. They have like one employee that's retired at 55. But what it would do is CREA health insurance, they'd actually pay for it till they're 65 as a perk to keep retention, et cetera, or employment. WUE for the employees have, I think it was a 12% match on the 401k.
Wow.
They have profit share match if they meet certain criteria. I was kind of asking the question is why would you actually need this? It actually costs money. They're going to come back next month with, or next meeting, it's in a couple months, with some numbers, et cetera. But my example was, you give health care to span until you're 65. I retired at 56 because I had that. If I didn't have health care, I'd still be working. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. So it's still on the table, but it might come back. But as a co-op member, I don't see us adding that extra money after somebody has left the company. During the company, yes, whatever you can incentivize. But once they leave, they leave. So I hate to be that way, but.
Thank you for being that way.
Yes. Joe, did that answer your question, Kirsten?
Dave, is there any talk about, or does Western United, can they get batteries? Is there any talk about getting into that business? Or?
Yes, there was talk about that, and the beauty of it is through Jessica's staff, whatever they asked for, and they were talking about getting into broadband even more, they're willing to do whatever the co-op, the beauty of this co-op is they're willing to do whatever we're asking of them if it's within reason, and that would be in reason. So there was talk about the battery, and there was a lot of talk about broadband also. So it's great. So if we do have to do batteries, you would want to go through WUE and try to see who else would want to do that, see if we can get some big pull on the buying to purchase it.
Have you heard from any other co-ops in the meetings?
No, they haven't mentioned that, but a lot of the co-ops were talking about broadband. So that's on their list. But I think it's something that would progress down as time goes by, because that's what everybody's looking at. A great question. Thank you.
Yeah. And I had one comment, because I went to the Western United meeting as well, and I don't know if you saw this, Jessica, but they've launched an e-commerce website to offload that stock. And they said it was available to members too.
Okay.
So if we're sitting on some things we don't think we'll ever use.
So they have whatever's slow moving or no moving stock.
Okay.
They will put on e-commerce website, and they offered it.
Yeah.
So if you have any stock that you're not going to ever use again,
Yeah.
they can put that on there and get rid of it for us.
Thank you.
Which is
I'll make
actually
sure
better.
Jerry knows about that.
Anything else Western United related? Got some things I can get over. Okay, that brings us to the end of the agenda. Kohler.
Can I ask a question on the tri-state?
Did we go right through that? Oh, it's in the appendix, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I have this on page 155, but they discuss a cybersecurity and infrastructure agency and a few others, and we talk about this joint advisory. Is that something that's on our radar as well?
Yeah, I believe it's the EISAC that we're talking about.
I think
Energy
that is
ISAC.
correct.
Yeah, we're, Drew and I get the alerts, we're very heavily involved in that group. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And so Kirsten sent out the email about some of us covering TS meetings, and so I'm just wondering, how are we gonna, I didn't see a lot of volunteers come forth through email. I don't know unless I missed some, but
Kirsten, did you see anything that the rest of us didn't see in terms of volunteers?
Yeah, I asked volunteers to go directly to me because I hate when people do reply all for that kind of stuff. So thank you to those who went directly to me. So I'm gathering. So Joe, I'm waiting for an email from you, man.
Well, I want to know, I mean, are you getting response or?
It's
testing the water.
I haven't gotten your response. Is that what you're asking?
You're right, you haven't gotten that response.
Right, but also.
I look.
Go ahead.
I get one question I have on that. So some of those meetings are like 3 days. So are we supposed to commit to be hanging around for all 3 of those days, waiting for the call from them to say you can come on now, or?
No. What I had said, and I maybe should have highlighted it better, is can you commit for some or all of a meeting? I would think that you might be able to hit a committee or two, but not hit the board meeting, or hit the board meeting and nothing else that month. So it basically is, if you have an hour, I'll take an hour. If you have 3 days, we'll take 3 days. It's up to you. I'm not trying to force anything. I think it's a good idea. I think, especially as we start looking into being, and maybe expanding our role in the electric community, we need to see what G&Ts do and what it looks like.
And all of those will be Zoom? I mean, are all those remote? Or
Yes.
They're all accessible remote. You can go up there, although we've been told not to go up there. So you can go up there, but you're going to want to probably do it by phone. Yeah.
And they are also recorded, is that correct?
No.
No.
They're not recorded.
Okay.
Take really good notes.
What all their documents, you should all have MIC access.
Yeah.
So, they also post all the documents after the meeting, and then also their reports are there, which I find very useful. I mean, my staff and I listen to those now the whole day. And they're pretty similar to the written report, sort of, Patrick.
Yeah, mostly, there's a little free.
What'd you say?
I was just wondering how much free time we would all have if we didn't have to do that. But that's.
All right, yeah, so any agenda, anything else, appendices, questions, comments, moving forward, Tim?
Yeah, I just noticed that there was a recognition from Colorado Country Life for LPEA, one of the employees here. So kudos, right?
Yeah.
Considering we don't
Yes.
contribute.
Yes. Yeah.
I was just curious about if someone wanted to get just a little bit of background on how we achieved that and.
Why we left Colorado Country?
No, how we achieved these rewards, the kudos. Was there?
Amanda, do you remember?
Yeah, there are two. So one was for an IT video that was done on social by Monica. And then the other piece was one by Whitney, also on social. So they were marketing output awards.
So, Country Life monitors our social media?
Yeah, they do.
Or did we submit something?
Did you submit, or was this, they just verified? Yeah.
Like,
I was
we
just
just
curious.
received them like 2 weeks ago.
I kind of have a feeling they've also reached out and asked if we would do an article recently on our safety program. So, that we left, Holly, yeah. So,
We submitted them.
yeah, oh, we submitted those? Okay.
I mean, kudos are good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last call, everybody.
I just need to remind everybody to get their sign-in sheets filled out, especially with mileage, if you're claiming mileage, getting to and from the meeting today.
That's a plea from Janelle
Yeah.
and Patrick.
All right, thanks again for a great meeting, and we are adjourned.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.